with devious dungeons, foreboding forests, and the coolest cats. My name is Phil, and welcome to the Dark Orb. It's quite an interesting and exciting episode today. I'm really over the moon. Symbaroum has had some interesting developments and a new product that has been announced this week on pre-order. For those who don't know, Symbaroum is a political game of morality, of power and corruption, of light and darkness and grey. Created by largely three amazing artists. We have Mattias Johnsson, who created this really interesting and unique rule set and obviously contributed to the world itself. Martin Grip, who the art says everything. You know, they say a picture can paint 1,000 words, and without that art, we probably would have no idea where we are and what we're doing. And the amazing author, Mattias Johnsson Haake, who is with me.
Hi.
Mattias, how are you?
I'm super good and really excited to be on the Dark Orb for the first time, the very first time.
What are we here to talk about? There's something really cool that's hit the web store and pre-orders.
Yeah, we are super excited to announce finally, I should say, a starter set for Symbaroum. Our people call it dark and mysterious, and also which is kind of true, very deadly fantasy role-playing game.
I would say it is a dark and mysterious game, but I don't think that's necessarily the darkness within the setting and the world itself on the surface. I think actually, for my group at least, and for my own personal experiences, the darkness is more in the choices that one has to make. And when you're faced with two terrible decisions and you have to make one, and as a GM, me knowing that whatever decision they make is going to have consequences, you know, that's the darkness that we don't see too often in campaign, you know, pre-written campaign games.
No, I have sort of, because when the game was released in English in 2015, so it's been out there for a while, and during the first years I often objected when people called the game dark, and made the argument that sure, it's not your most heroic kind of fantasy role-playing game, but still, compared to the world we live in, I wouldn't describe Symbaroum's world as dark, because it's not pitch black. It's not like, World of Darkness or something. There is hope. There is reasons to strive. There are possibilities to get along, to avoid that fight and find a common ground instead. And all those things are absolutely possible in Symbaroum. So maybe what I tried to suggest back then, but it sounds so insanely boring, but maybe not dark, but it's a little bit more serious.
Once you said to me it's not for children, it's a game for adults. I mean, that doesn't mean that kids can't play it, but
I've seen you say that, and very happy that you agree still, that because all this, you called it political and moral ambiguity that you find in Symbaroum, as well as in, say, for instance, Game of Thrones or some other pop cultural phenomenons. It does not mean that you have to play that way.
Absolutely.
In the end, and that's one of the amazing things with role-playing games, that no matter what me and Mattias write, or no matter what Martin draws, it becomes a new game every time it hits the table, because the gaming group, the game master, the players will mold what we have come up with into their own game.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And they should.
Yes, completely. For example, in my game, we don't play as often as we would like for various reasons. but it's taken us a really long time to just get to where we are, which is maybe a third of the way through the first book in the Throne of Thorns campaign. Purely
Yeah, but to be
because,
fair, I know you have played quite a lot of smaller adventures, the Copper Crown, and
yeah, a
yeah,
couple. I guess we should probably address the elephant in the room there then.
yeah, we should.
So I'm a little bit biased in that I'm very lucky that I got to playtest the adventure locations in the
The starter
treasure hunts
set.
in Davokar, the starter set. Let's have a look at that actually, and
Yeah.
just bring that up. So what do we get? We get a 64-page rulebook, which is a cut-down version, I would say, of what you get in the core rulebook itself. A 64-page adventure compendium, which is like a combination of the GM side of the rulebook, maybe a little bit pulled in, and Mattias can correct me, a little bit pulled in from like the Game Master's Guide and parts of Symbar, the most recent campaign book. Symbaroum dice. We're going to have to talk about those Symbaroum dice.
For sure.
Double-sided map of the main game setting, which is Davokar and Ambria, and the town of Thistlehold, which is one of the primary locations that certainly if you take the Throne of Thorns campaign, for example, you're going to spend a lot of time there. Second double-sided map of the 2 pre-made adventure landscapes. I played the pre-test, and I'm like, I played the playtest, and they're going to be a lot better than the maps we had. I'm going to tell you that right now. But I still want to see an original version in print. It's never going to happen. 6 character sheets. Now, we'll talk about why there are 6 character sheets. And
Yes.
there's also a PDF art book, only if you pre-order. And that pre-order is only available until 16th of February.
Correct.
There is already an art book, isn't there? Which I have here.
Yeah, that
So-
the golden oldie. Yeah, it's out of
I love it.
circulation now since a while back, I think. And yeah, I love it too. I think it's some people have complained
I
about
can
the
see it on the
size,
shelf behind you,
but
actually.
yeah, you can. Yeah. No secrets here. What I was going to say, because I had an interview on the Free League news channel yesterday, and we kind of completely forgot to mention the price
That's a good
of the and this starter set that you just showed will hit the shelves for about $40, which
Yeah.
is actually less than the core rulebook.
It is.
So
And I pre-ordered
yeah.
mine. I think I paid about £42 or so, including shipping to the UK,
Cool.
which is reasonable. And excuse me, the thing that I find great about these starter sets is that actually the component quality is really high. And I think this is something that you established with, that Frio Ligan established with Forbidden Lands, is the idea of a box set where the components within that box set are as good as you can reasonably put in there with the tiny, tiny price that you're trying to charge.
Yeah, exactly. There is trying to hit that sweet spot. We should say that regarding Forbidden Lands, it was designed after a Kickstarter, so it wouldn't maybe have been quite as exclusive with hardcover books if it weren't for that Kickstarter. I don't know, but you can see now also the Alien starter set that we launched about half a year ago, I think, or is it even more? Time flies. We really try to get, not only good printing quality but good binding, and
Not only good, that's perfect binding. Let's get it right.
yeah, it's actually called perfect binding, but not only glued, it's also sewn. So the books should really stick together.
Yeah.
Even after much use.
Yeah.
And then quality paper in the pre-printed maps and the character sheets, and and we have the dice as well to dissect in a little while, I guess.
Absolutely. I actually really like. Actually, let's have a look at the comments first of all. So, Frederick Venberg says, "I want the Symbaroum T-shirt." Now, Matthias and I are actually modelling
Yeah,
two
we
different
are.
versions of the Symbaroum T-shirt. Mine actually was from All Rolled Up, and last I looked, which we're going back a few months, they may still have some available, so it's worth a look.
This one, which on the back, I will show you here, it has a little text to say, "I discovered the Dark of Davokar," if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And it was exclusively printed for the backers of the initial Indiegogo campaign that was
I'll see
used
if I
for
can show
fun.
the back of mine.
Yeah, you have the Throne of Thorns one. Yeah, that one is cool. I love that too.
Yeah, we kind of lucked out in terms of.
No, but
t-shirts.
just to answer if there was a question from Frederick, I can say that Free League, we have a partner when it comes to merchandise. Both we have all rolled up that make some stuff, and then we have. You can, if you go into any product page on our in our web shop, at the top of it you can read about the merch. I'm really sorry, but I cannot remember the name. Yeah, it is. Thanks.
Not that I pay attention.
So and you can find like posters and canvas prints, I think, of some titles, and also hoodies, I believe, of some.
Yeah, there's not a lot of Symbaroum stuff on there.
No, we are continuously working to provide more material for that site.
No, it's fine. I don't need more Symbaroum stuff. To be fair, I don't need more Free League stuff. I mean, I have a shelf that's full of Free League stuff. Most of it, I think only Mutant is something that I've not either played or run yet. But you see here, I have 2 art books that are ready to shift over when more content arrives. But I don't think that
Basin.
Yeah, I don't think that the Symbaroum starter set is going to fit on this shelf. So I'm going to have to rethink my entire strategy for.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
You shouldn't buy it, Phil.
I've got 2 copies of Alien here, so maybe one can go upstairs to the other shelf. We have games in more than one location. The actual so what else we have? Nasser says awesome game and elegant system. Good to see you. Thank you, my friend. Krista says hi, as does Olaf and Neil. Thank you, everyone, for joining and taking part. The actual game itself, it's quite a daunting game if you're just coming in for the first time, isn't it? Yeah, Symbaroum.
Yeah,
so, I mean, look.
That's why.
Let's see. There to there. This is all Symbaroum books. There's like 13 or so books, if I include Adventure Pack 1, which kind of technically counts. It's
that's why we have wanted to do the starter set for many years now, especially going to conventions and such, and trying to convince people to give it a try, and they see this massive wall of different books, which is, I mean, I shouldn't complain about that, but sometimes people get a little bit taken aback about the sheer volume, and even if we say that everything you need to start playing, everything you need to learn the rules about the setting, you can find in the core book. It's an all-in-one. People are still at least some are easier to, you get also the dice, you get the pre-made characters, you get the maps, and you get everything in a neat little package, plus the fact that the rules are not scaled down in a mechanical sense, but only in a when it comes to quantity, I would say. So there are less rules element presented in the starter set, but it's the same rules.
So for example, Your players have abilities and they have access to magical powers. And when you're playing a campaign, you have the opportunity to advance these 2 XP. It's 10 XP to take a new ability at novice, and then 20 again on top of that to progress it to adept, and then 30 again to get to master. There's really not much point in spending that real estate in print to put the master rules in if they're only going to play those 2 adventure locations, because unless you're a really generous GM, they're probably not going to get that to that 30 XP that they need to advance that skill level, and you can use that page space for other things.
But there are room for the pre-made characters to grow. We made sure of that in the design. There are the novice and adept ability level of each ability is mentioned, and most obviously start with only the novice. So there is some room to grow, and the idea actually is that the Symbaroum starter set, or as it's actually called, the Treasure Hunts in Davokar, is meant to provide quite a lot of hours for gaming groups. It's not just something that you are done with on just a couple of evenings. You can play with it quite a long while, I would say, before deciding if you want to mature into the original game.
We powered through those scenarios as quickly as we could when we were playtesting. But it was quite clear that if we hadn't been intentionally trying to play them quickly, which we were, we weren't cutting anything out, but we were just seeing how quickly you could play it, and taking into mind how someone from another system, for example, might want to just give it a quick go. So the first scenario we did much more quickly than probably one could.
I know. You actually revealed to me that you cut one aspect out of that scenario.
That wasn't intentional. That was
you forgot it.
Yes, there was a bit I forgot, but also there was something to do with the way that the characters approached the setting. So they managed to just bypass an entire. This happens all the time when you're gaming.
Cool.
Bypass an entire piece of story.
That's the whole idea with these, because the scenarios in the starter set are not adventure paths in the sense that you move from A to B to C and D, and then you meet the big boss and it's the end. Both of them are, as we call them, adventure landscapes, meaning that there is a main conflict, there is a stage or a setting, and then you let and NPCs, of course, with their own agendas and wants and needs, and then you let the player characters loose on that landscape and see where it takes you.
Yeah, it's great fun. It's great fun.
It fits the gaming style of some, but maybe not all. And I mean, if you look at the bigger picture of the original Symbaroum system and the releases so far, we try to design adventures in different ways so that every kind of taste, if you will find one or two scenarios that they can favor in front of the others, because people like different,
Yeah, they do. And even that first book, Wrath of the Warden, for example, has a mixture of railroaded stuff, adventure landscape stuff, where basically you say, hey, this is what's going on. These things are going to happen at some point. See what happens. Here's a general idea of how the story goes, and you just let your players do what they want.
And there is maybe one. I mean, there is always the option for the game master to decide that in my gaming group or my group of heroes, they will need some kind of quest giver to more or less point them to where they need to be and so on. And that is always a possibility, but they are written. And here is maybe one of the things that makes you say that it's not primarily role-playing game for children is that the players and their characters are assumed to be able to take the lead, so to speak, and make the adventure come alive themselves. Interact with NPCs and try to solve mysteries or whatnot.
Which is the hardest thing, and then actually finding the character in any role-playing game is a very hard thing to do, and different people do it in different ways. You have quite a lot of different ways to play a character, in terms of you can have your character sheet in front of you and just treat it like almost a video game. Or you can take that amateur dramatic approach of thinking, well, what is my motivation? Who am I? And that's what I prefer to do personally. As a GM, obviously, it's very different as well. One thing I thought was really interesting from our playtesting, though, was one of my players, when they first started playing their character, was really not that impressed, didn't like their character at all. By the time we had finished those 2 scenarios and put 3 or 4, maybe 5 sessions in, I can't quite recall, they really wanted to know what was happening next. They'd found their character within the character sheet, and they still, to this day, 6 months later or however long ago it was, they still keep going back and saying, oh, that character was really cool, and I really enjoyed that. So that
good to hear.
So that gives them an idea of how clever those characters are in their design.
Yeah, we have. No, I should take. If anyone really hates them, they should know that it's me that you should blame.
Blame Mattias.
Yeah, blame me, because. And obviously, I have put them together in a way that we try to display the bandwidth of different.
They really complement each other, don't they?
Yeah,
there's not a lot of crossover.
Yeah, no, but they complement each other in the sense that tactically, because Symbaroum can be played in much like a very tactical system when it comes to combat, and also in problem-solving situations. And it's important that the characters know how they can contribute not only themselves, but contribute to making others more effective at what they do.
And that's super important.
And that's one of the things we wanted to show. So there are some interesting mechanics in the system that Mattias Lilja has created. For instance, the corruption mechanic, which is, I would say, at the center of both these 2 adventure landscapes that are in the starter set. And then there are, you have the ritual magic, which in Symbaroum is not only it's a really potent problem-solving tool.
Yeah.
So and that was also something we wanted to display. You have the witch sight ability, which lets some people sense the shadow or aura around people that can tell you a little bit about their connection to the forces of corruption. I was almost about to say evil, but it's really not. No, it's not fair. It's not fair. You can play Symbaroum as if corruption is evil. Of course you can.
It's just another consequence of decisions, though, isn't it, for the most part? And this is the primary reason why I find that, at least as that boilerplate description, Symbaroum's not really a kid's game, is actually because when you're faced with a difficult decision, you have to weigh consequences. And I think that's something that, in honesty, is something that you learn over time. And that's not to say that children don't make those sorts of decisions. But maybe they won't appreciate the consequences so much because they won't be necessarily reflecting on what they did 6 months ago, for example. They'll still enjoy it. It's a fantastic system. Let's talk about what's in those books. So there's 2 books in the starter set, and here are the covers: Starter Rules and Setting and Adventures.
Yeah.
So that first book, the Starter Rules, it's a cut down version of the rule book, the core rule book rules, as we said.
Yep.
Things like the abilities and magical powers are much more abridged. There are fewer of them to really make the most out of the new players. But in terms of the actual mechanics, most of the mechanics I would say are there, if not all of them.
And there are some optional rules that
Yep.
that in the Symbaroum core rulebook are placed in the game master section.
Yes.
Those, I believe, at least most of them are not introduced in this starter set.
Yeah, some of those are really, really vital for us at least.
Yeah, I
Either in
mean,
terms of keeping your party alive, or just mixing it up a little bit because that's a tricky one. Symbaroum is such a deadly game, and if you are a ruthless game master, you can quite easily do a TPK if your players don't know how to make the most of a situation, which is super tempting. I've been tempted on more than one occasion, but the balance of that is that if you really upset your players, they might not want to come back. And in the when you're trying to demo a new game, for example, as a new player for Symbaroum with the starter set, you probably want to keep your players alive.
yeah.
You can
Probably.
hurt them a lot and maybe let one of them
I
die.
mean,
but if you have a
have,
TPK, they might not come back.
the idea behind Symbaroum being so deadly is mainly two of them. First one would be that we want decisive fighting in the sense that if you enter into the fray, you again should be prepared to pay the consequences.
Yeah.
And having this deadly, quite punishing system also, I mean, it's a very, you don't spend many minutes per game session in fights.
No.
Compared to a lot of other games because it is often decided in quite a few turns.
Yep. You don't chip away at someone's health points
exactly.
Until, for over the course of an hour, you'll...
Or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put any spoilers in, but Wrath of the Warden, the first book in the Throne of Thorns big game campaign, there is in the beginning of in the first half of that, let's put it like that, a large ongoing battle that takes some time, depending on how it's played. That was the most combat that we'd seen throughout the whole thing, because we had basically one entire session of combat. Whereas I think in some other systems, I know that in some other systems I've played, that probably would have been 3, 4, 5 game sessions. Dealing with this
for sure.
Battle,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And the consequences were pretty dire. We nearly lost a couple of players. Things like advantage really show their strengths, and when your opponent has advantage on you and there's nothing you can do, you can get hurt really badly in Symbaroum.
Oh yeah.
And then if you're also playing a magic user and you have to decide, do I dare use my magical ability here, knowing that it could have some serious consequences?
Yeah, because that's it's not only the enemies that hurt you. You can damage yourself quite severely by attracting corruption when using mystical items, and also you have when you cast spells, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, and there are also beasts and monsters and abominations that actually can give you corruption through their natural weapons. So yeah.
It's
anyway,
powerful. And
so
kudos to Lilia for that. Frank asked a really, really good question, actually, which is how close are the starter rules to the previous quick start rules?
Pretty close. I would say. I am also responsible for cutting together the 117-page starter rules. but those are only from the core rulebook
Yeah.
in the free PDF.
Yeah.
So there is quite a vast difference in that. In the starter set, you also get what admittedly is not very well developed in the core rulebook, namely how to design treasure hunt adventures.
Yeah.
More information on both Thistlehold and on Davokar, the grand forest with all its ruins and such. So if I remember correctly, I think there are a little bit more of the rule set from the core book represented in the PDF.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is more scaled down and more mindfully designed to create, a setup for doing exploration and treasure hunts.
It feels more like whereas the starter quick start rules that previously existed are number one, they're free, which is useful. But whereas they are quite clearly derived from the core rulebook and Adventure Pack 1 in terms of we've got Blight Knight as the scenario in that, I believe.
Yeah.
This has been approached from the angle of we have the Game Master's Guide, we've got the Advanced Player's Guide, we've got things that we have created, I say we, that Mattias and Martin have created within Symbar and other books over the course of the last however many years. And the finest points of those have been assembled in a way that actually presents a lot more depth. I think also...
Yeah, but also focus. I mean,
yes.
the starter set is really focused on the exploration part of, and when I say exploration, it's not only going to ruins and digging out ancient artifacts. It's also about, ancient knowledge, understanding the forces of corruption, how they affect not only the world, but also the people and creatures in it.
Yeah, that's really accurate. And actually even, and I won't give any spoilers here, but even in terms of understanding the danger of terrain. So whereas in something like D&D, you might find that you skip over getting to your dungeon because you know where it is. You're just going to, oh, look, we're at the dungeon. There's a really good aspect of actually the peril of even making that journey and the effect that can have on your party, because if you're traveling through effectively what is a corrupted land in some places, it's not a dauntless task, and there is peril and danger, and there is a chance that by the time you get to your destination, you're already quite hurt. That's fairly uncommon, I think, in terms of starter set material. I think also, if we look at the scenarios or the adventure landscapes in Treasure Hunts and Davokar compared to the Promised Land, for example, which is the first scenario that you get presented with when you open the core rulebook, it's a very different feel. Promised Land is great, and it really sets up an idea of the different kinds of challenges that you'll see when you actually go into the campaign. But I don't think it's necessarily great at meeting the expectations of someone who just thinks it's a dungeon crawling game, which it's not just a dungeon crawling game, but Promised Land doesn't have any dungeon crawling. So people who are looking for that might be a little bit disappointed, might be disillusioned to what you're going to see. Symbaroum itself, you're going to have dungeon crawling, you're going to have intrigue, you're going to have moral decisions, you have to deal with factions, and little bits of all of this are present in the starter set.
Oh yeah,
it's great. I mean, I'm biased because I love Symbaroum. I think it's
and your name is in this product as well. So
yeah, but that was probably after you.
No one believes what you say. Anyway,
well, I did send some notes back your way, and
you did. Sure actually, everyone should know that Phil aren't afraid to say when, or say stop, or say no, change this. Please.
Sorry. But we had great fun, and
Yeah.
everyone contributed. And the party we had was 3 established players. Let me think. Yeah, 3 established players, 1 established GM, other than me, in the player party, and someone who's never played Symbaroum before and primarily plays 5th edition and other games, but primarily 5th edition. So it was quite interesting to get the player viewpoint from people who have been playing the campaign for a year, someone who has run Throne of Thorns campaign for a couple of years, and someone who's brand new to the whole thing. And funneling that in and seeing what comes out was really an interesting experience. That said, what do we think about this product for established groups?
Well, it isn't designed for established groups, of course. So that's that.
Yeah.
No, there are a few.
And next. No,
there are a few
that can be done,
reasons to consider investing in the starter set, even for people who are already familiar with the game. We have talked about the 2 adventure landscapes, which is one such reason, because they are not printed or presented elsewhere. They are original stuff by yours truly and Mattias Lilja. And then one of the things that I know people have been, and me too, I say, is the dice, the Symbaroum dice set. We also present and introduce the new stat block for NPCs, which has a little bit more finesse than the previous one. Yeah, here you see it. And if you look at the left side, 3rd block from the bottom, you see something called integrated, which lists monstrous traits and abilities and such that are already, that the game master can actually ignore when playing, because all the effects has already been included in things like armor or defense or damage or whatnot.
So whereas previously, and this is a little bit like the player, the cards that you can buy, whereas previously in the books you would see the actual statistics for accuracy and accurate and cunning and discreet and the like. Here, what has been done is that the
it's only the modifier.
Exactly, the modifier that you would place on the player character when they're competing against that statistic, because in case people are watching and don't know the system, the way that Symbaroum works is that only the players generally roll dice. As a GM, you can choose to roll a dice. Sometimes I do, like flipping a coin to make a decision, or if there's an NPC that you decide that you want to do the dice rolls for, then fine. But generally, if your player is attacking someone, then they are rolling an attack die that is modified by the defending stat of the creature or whatever that they're attacking. If they're being attacked, then they actually roll to defend or to evade the attack, modified by how good that creature is at attacking them. So it really puts you as a player as the focus of any encounter, whether it's combat or social challenge or whatnot, because it's about
keeps you busy.
Yeah, exactly. That
there is not a lot of downtime for the players when playing Symbaroum, which is one of the ideas behind the system. Another idea being that you want to free the game master from sitting, head down over the dice cup.
Instead you're head down trying to remember what all of the NPC abilities are. Which is the other challenge. But you don't have to do that and roll dice.
Yeah, I would like to highlight the 4th cool feature of this starter set. I would say that in some senses, because I know people love the art of Martin Grip, the starter set is a collection of. We have other artists, especially great guy called Gustav Ekelund, who works with us on Symbaroum. But this starter set is only Martin Greep's imagery, and he has been also part in, approving which artwork is used in this starter set, just to make it sort of a favorite collection in some sense. And he has also polished some of the images, and there are a few new ones as well.
So should we, let's have a look at some of the art that's been curated. Also, I will say that you mentioned dice. We will come back and talk about dice.
Okay.
We do have a sneak peek on and a slightly better definition of what they look like.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to run through some of the artwork, and maybe, sort of 10 seconds or less on each one, you could touch on what each of these pieces represents to you. That would be awesome. So this is obviously starts with something from the core rulebook as well.
This is the blight-stricken or blight-born creatures of the forest of Davokar that has been so thoroughly corrupted by the as the witches call it, the darkness of the forest, that they are no longer breathing, but still moving. Yeah, here we see a scene from one of the battles that were fought when the setting's main people, you can say, called the Ambrians, who fled from their dying lands and ended up in this region south of the forest of Davokar. And during the first decade or so, they fought many wars against the clan folks of the barbarian clans who called this land their home. So here we see, I think it's a Templar maybe of Prios,
on the right hand side there.
On the right hand side, and you have a warrior of, I would say that's from the Karuhar clan, a Karit.
It's probably worth also just mentioning on the word barbarian for a second, because I think there is a presumption from fantasy and sword and sorcery fantasy, really, to presume that when we talk about barbarians, we mean Conan the Barbarian, and it's not that really so much as the native people, I guess, to an extent. And whether or not they are native is something for further discussion as you go through the campaigns. But which is, there's just so much to this world. But it's not so much your oiled titans with just underwear and nothing else brandishing broadswords. It's much more
looking at the core book, it is the setting is very much presented from the perspective of this civilization of Ambria, which is a kingdom with the queen Corinthia, who have fled from their former lands. So they talk about these clan folks. There are 11 distinct clans living in the Davokar region. They talk about them as barbarians.
It's a relative term, isn't it?
It's a relative term, and as well, they talk about their old enemy from the Great War that they have fled from. They talk about the leaders of the enemy as the Dark Lords. But that's also something that you will have reasons to ponder when playing, especially if you're playing the Throne of Thorns campaign. You will learn more about that enemy as well. So I guess it's one way to present the setting that is full of symbols and archetypes that can be revealed to be something else, or that can be nuanced, or that can be, further understood by getting to know these clans, or traveling. I'm currently writing the 5th episode in the Throne of Thorns, which is set in the old land of Alberetor. Yeah, I'm
Hashtag spoilers.
no, I'm not going to spoil anything. The book will be called most likely Alberetor, the Haunted Waste. So the fact that you are going down to Alberetor, that's pretty obvious from the cover. But what happens there, I won't go into, and what happens in Umbria in the meantime. And yeah, I'm super psyched about that one because it will deepen the players and characters' understanding even more of what actually happened during that Great War.
Yeah, absolutely. And just touching back on this idea of the question of why an established group might want to buy this set, there are a couple of things that I thought about and I considered possibly doing when we were playtesting. One is that you can take these scenarios or these landscapes and just inject them into your game, and obviously you can modify the difficulty. They're quite difficult scenarios anyway, but obviously as your player characters scale, they can pretty much do anything if you don't keep it in check. As a GM, it's just something you have to learn to work with. The second way, which I think actually would be much more appealing, would be to maybe have your characters encounter a number of the party and be very careful to not say who they are, because you don't know what's going to happen when you play it. But to have them encounter a number of people, either at a campfire or in a pub and an inn or something, and then maybe segue, just take 3 or 4 sessions out of your campaign with your players playing these new player characters, and then you can actually end that as, and that's who we are. That's what we've done over the last 2 months. What about you? And then you can then turn it back to your original player character party and have that feedback in. So it can become almost like I would say like a sorbet, just to clear the palate, in your meals, so that you can then go back to something else.
We have actually a section on this kind of in the Game Master's Guide called Troop Play.
I love this book. Exactly that, Troop Play. If you haven't read this book, it's just super cool. It's not the thickest book in the Symbaroum arsenal, but it is so valuable. And the things that are in there, there's a lot of questions answered about how to deal with things that you encounter over time playing the campaign. We are beginning to run out of time. So, yeah, it's just flying by, isn't it? So we've got two adventure landscapes in the second book, along with a whole load of GM stuff, right? It's a mixture of things from Symbaroum, from the Game Master's Guide, from the Cool Rule Book. 2 scenarios. There's a double-sided map in the... yes, there are 2. So there's one which is effectively the Symbaroum game world map, if you like. It's Davokar and Umbria, and a hint at what lies beneath the Titan Mountains at the bottom, which is, I guess we're going to need a new map for this new book then.
Oh, yeah.
And then on the other side of that is Thistlehold, which is the primary town that you'll spend time in to begin with if you're playing the campaign. The second map is double-sided and has key locations from each of the adventure landscapes. So that's really cool. I saw the original versions of those and they were interesting. That's all I'm going to say. You can just about make out...
You worked with, it was mine and Mattias sketch.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I translated them as best I could I translated them as best I could into other platforms, and that worked to an extent. It was fun. It was a good time had by all. I mean, did you take into account anything else that was in the Throne of Thorns campaign when you were designing those?
Scenario landscapes? No, they are standalone. They are. I mean, there are lessons to learn in those scenarios, that will be valuable when playing the Throne of Thorns.
Yeah.
Especially regarding the workings of corruption and such.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, we wanted to keep them simple and clean. I mean, they are designed as starter scenarios or starters landscapes, meaning that we want to keep them the complication level pretty low.
Yeah, and then I think ideally, if I was to do it, I would probably then encourage my players to create new characters to do the Promised Land with, and then to
their own
that establishment. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, you can use these, but I think it would be a little out of place. You'd have to almost retcon for the Promised Land in order to do that, and say, oh well, we did this first, and then. Should we talk very quickly about those dice?
Yeah, we can do that.
So we did have a question. I didn't forget about it. I just need to find it. Where are you hiding? There's so many questions. Thank you, everyone. I can't find it now.
Should I sing something in the meantime?
Yes, in jazz style. I can't find the question, but I'm going to paraphrase it. It's along the lines of, will dice be available outside of this product? So let's have a look at them first, because you did try and demo them yesterday in the Free League interview, but unfortunately we had some camera issues. This is a better representation of what they look like.
Yes.
They're pretty funky. I mean, I guess you had the decision to either go with a really fancy engraving on the 1 or the 20, or and have basic dice, or go for something really, really pretty but with standard numbering. I think
because we didn't want to put out a starter set that would set you back. I mean, 40 quid or $50 or something like that. That would be just not very good. And dice are one of the most expensive aspects, especially when you have polyhedral, a different number of sides. If you print 10 D6s per box, it's cheaper because you still only have the one mold. So my choice in this case was either go with plain, maybe kick it up to very plain basic dice with some form of symbol that would be custom made, or skip the symbol and go with still a little bit more exclusive set, but without specific symbols. And I am very picky when it comes to dice.
Quality, generally, I think
the quality, but also the feel. We have looked at options for printing Symbaroum dice many years. What I liked with this one is when if you put up the image again, they look kind of dark in the light, and you see the lush green and the streaks of corruption. Floating in the midst of it. If you see these dice in daylight, they are actually much less jade green and more like birch leaves or something very. So they also change color depending on the lighting around you. So and for a starter set, I say that bright Davokar dice set fits perfectly, but that doesn't mean that we won't investigate the option to actually produce other kinds of dice set, and maybe even try to design someone a set or two with also with symbols on them.
That would be really cool.
Do you want to know my hope, my dream?
No, we don't want that. Of course
you do. I would like to, and I'm looking into it now, to produce 2 sets of dice sets. One called Corrupted Nature, and the other one called Corrupted Blood. So you would have these, and also with special symbols on them. So we'll see if and when that happens.
That
But
would be amazing. And Frederick Venberg has a couple of questions. One which I think is related to this, which is any more on the 5e conversion. I think I can safely say on your behalf that it depends on how well the Ruins of Symbaroum goes and how well received that is. But I know it's something
you
that you're
mean
still looking at.
the free PDF?
Yeah, yeah, and the reception of that. But I know you guys are working on
No,
where that's going to go.
the project is a go.
Yeah,
But I cannot tell you today how far it has gone and exactly what the result will be.
yeah,
And when it will be announced, but stay tuned during the first half of this year and you will get more news on the 5e conversion.
yeah.
Because it would be a complete shock to me if it didn't happen, because
I'll be all over the swag. I won't buy the books, but I'll be all over everything else. So just do a Symbaroum stuff for someone who doesn't play 5e. That'll be fine. Although I do have 5e on the shelf, you can kind of see there.
but I mean 5e version, it won't be a different set of books. It will be a conversion of the existing books. I mean, first a core set, if you will, and then depending on how that goes, hopefully we can start looking at adventures and not least the Throne of Thorns.
And I think that'd be a good opportunity then to also look at obviously more dice, poly sets.
Yeah.
And then people who are playing D&D will start using those dice, and then slowly we'll
because they are so
all
beautiful.
Of them. One final question, and then we're going to be at the hour. This is a great question, and I'd like to know the answer of this.
Not the first time I've been hit by that question. When will?
Yeah, I think the question is will, isn't it? I have my own opinion on this, which is a slight diversion, which is maybe one of those stories could be edited down and refined, and maybe one time in the near future. And this has not happened, and you know, don't pretend that I'm saying this is something that's going on, but I would love it if Martin Grip could maybe illustrate a graphic novel based on one of your books. Maybe that would be a nice
that would
compromise.
be really sort of like a Stardust.
Yeah, exactly.
Neil Gaiman, the Neil Gaiman book. Yeah,
my favorite comic.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Also. No, the thing is that to me at least, as the writer of these novels, novels are much more difficult to translate than games, because I have higher, expectations when it comes to the text itself and how it flows and so on. So also there's the problem that novels in general, it's not what I mean. We do Stålenhag's art books that are in some sense, graphic novels, or actually they are graphical novels, but with a lot of cool art.
Yeah.
But when it comes to novels, and especially in English, we don't have any experience in the free league to publish that kind of stuff. So it's not off the table. It's not off the table, but it's such a project would be buried underneath of a lot of other stuff.
Absolutely.
So we'll see.
If it's a graphic novel, you need fewer words. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
So we're at the top of the hour pretty much. Mattias Johnsson Haake, thank you very much. It's been amazing. If you are interested, the starter set is available at symbaroum.com or freeligan.se. Yeah, stay tuned. There's a new book coming at some point, being written right now with a title that has been announced. If you missed it, you're going to have to go back. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and the follow and the subscribe and ring the bell and all that other stuff. Mattias, there's a Twitter Free League Pub. which is probably the best way for people to find out the news, as well as obviously following the Free League page on Facebook and all that other good stuff.
You also have the brand new site Symbaroum.com.
Yeah,
that you can check it out.
That's really nice, and also the other properties have also got their own microsites, I guess they are as well. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Have a great one.